+1, then 202.
Stand up! Stand up!
Sporty greetings, Voice of America listeners. I'm Jackson Vunganyi. I'm stepping in for Sunny Young. Welcome to the January 26th edition of the Sunny Side of Sports. On today's show, we'll continue our special coverage of the Africa Cup of Nations football tournament, or AFCON, in Ivory Coast. The group stage is done, and starting tomorrow, Saturday, January the 27th, until Tuesday, January the 30th, the remaining 16 teams will battle it out to reach the quarterfinals. In the group stages, Senegal led the way by winning 3 games. Ghana, a soccer powerhouse on the continent, was eliminated from the tournament after drawing 2 games and losing 1 game. Ghana this week fired coach Chris Hughton. In 2019 winners, Algeria was another favorite to be eliminated from the tournament. They lost to Mauritania 1-0 victory at the Stade de la Paix on Tuesday. Meanwhile, Cameroon, 5-time champions, scored 2 late goals against Gambia to secure a place into the last 16. Equatorial Guinea and Cape Verde have impressed with some stellar performances against formidable opponents. And for more AFCON action, I'm joined by Ugandan sports writer and analyst Jonah Byakutaga. He joins me from Kampala, Uganda. Jonah, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us here in Kampala, Uganda. Let's start off with the hosts, Ivory Coast. They're getting their second chance to stay in the tournament after escaping early elimination in what would have been an embarrassing exit so far. Explain to us how they're moving forward. Explain to us the math. How did Ivory Coast get to keep their hopes alive after that loss to Equatorial Guinea? What has been called a humiliating loss. Do the math for us here.
It's a pleasure being here as always. And what a tournament we are having at the Africa Cup of Nations. Probably the best that we've had in recent times. It's been exciting. So many goals, so many underdog stories, and of course the giants falling by the wayside. Of course, Ghana, Algeria, Tunisia, the big names. Ivory Coast just surviving. They came away as one of the best third-place teams. So when the Africa Cup of Nations expanded in terms of size from 16 to 24 teams, it meant that the top 2 teams in all groups advanced automatically for the round of 16. That meant 12 teams had advanced. Now, it left 4 spots up for grabs, and that meant that the best third-place teams, the 4 best third-place teams, would get a chance, a second bite of the cherry, and they would have a chance to advance to the round of 16. Now, Ivory Coast were terrible all through their group stages. They won their opening game against Guinea-Bissau, and then they lost 1-0 in a heavyweight clash with Nigeria, and then they were shockingly thumped by everybody's now favorite team, Equatorial Guinea. That left them with only 3 points, which meant that they had to wait until basically the last kick of the group stages. The game between Morocco and Zambia was the game that determined their fate. Now, Morocco and Zambia are not even in their group. Morocco and Zambia are in Group F, but there was only 1 slot left for the 4 of the best third-place teams, and that slot was to be taken by either Ivory Coast or Zambia. Now, a draw for Zambia and Morocco would have sent Ivory Coast out of the tournament. I almost said would have sent them home, or would have kept them home, rather. But Morocco beating Zambia meant that Ivory Coast only snatched that last berth by 1 point. So they had 3 points, and Zambia had 2 points, and that's how the Ivorians managed to stay alive in this tournament.
I guess the question is, what happened to Ivory Coast? I mean, they have the advantage of actually hosting, being a host nation. You would think that there's energy already there that is kind of inbuilt in the tournament. You have home court advantage, you have a fan base, and Ivory Coast is actually a solid team in itself. What happened?
I tell you what, Jackson, at the start of this tournament, when I was asked who my pick was to win this tournament, I went confidently with Morocco without hesitation. And when I was asked who the dark horse was for me, I hesitated between Ivory Coast and Nigeria. Eventually, I settled for Nigeria only because of Victor Osimhen, the goals that he scored for Napoli in Italy. I thought Nigeria may just come in underrated without anybody paying attention. But I thought, let's keep an eye on Ivory Coast. They've not got a bad team and they're playing at home. But I'm as shocked as you are. But I'll put it down to the coach. And I'm not surprised that Jean-Louis Gasset has lost his job. When you look at the team that he's picked, obviously Sebastian Haller has struggled with fitness issues. We know he is their leading marksman. Any day he should be starting up front, leading the attack. His absence all through these group stages has been, of course, you cannot deny that because he scored so many goals to get them to the tournament. And his absence at the tournament so far is clear. They can't score goals up front. Now, if I were the coach at this point, I would go for experience. You've got a guy like Nicolas Pepe. Eventually, he started him, unfortunately, in the game when they lost 4-0, but started him as a false nine. And that's not Pepe's position. Everybody knows when he was at Arsenal, coming off the right wing on his left foot, when he was at Lille in France, stick him out on the right side, get Max Grado out on the left, and you've got plenty of experience in there. Get Serge Aurier back into the starting lineup. They dropped him for that final game. And then get the Brighton man, Adingra. He's new at this stage, but he's been exciting for Brighton. He can play the false nine. If you have Adingra, Pepe, and Max Grado, you've got movement, you've got flair, you've got confusion for the opposing defense. That's what, for me, I would go for, and get Sergio Aurier back into that team. Go for your experienced heads. I don't think he's done that. Maybe he's not trusted some of these older players, and they've almost, he's paid the price with his job, and Ivory Coast live to fight another day, and I hope now that they've got a new coach, of course, Emas Faye, former international player. With these former international players, they seem to understand the dynamics around these teams, especially in African football, and they understand what superstars are and the aura that they come with into the setup. So I believe when we get to the Monday game, that huge clash between, of course, Ivory Coast and the defending champion Senegal in the round of 16, I think the new coach, Emerson Faye, will probably go for experience. I think Pepe will come in. I think Sergio Aurier, Max Grado, maybe even Adingra, not that experienced, but very exciting. So I think they'll revert to the tried and tested and go for it.
And they will come in with a chip on their shoulders on this, in this case, with a point to prove. Hopefully the new coach will heed some of your advice. And now let's go to another top contender, Egypt, which lost Mo Salah, perhaps one of the best players in the world right now. And now they will turn to striker Mustafa Mohamed. What happened to Salah, and how does his absence affect the team's chances at winning the trophy?
So, Egypt would have been in this equation with Ivory Coast battling to qualify if Ghana had held up their end of the deal in that game against Ghana's game, that is at the very end against Mozambique. If Ghana had won their game, Egypt would probably be out of the tournament, or maybe they would have just sneaked in ahead of Ivory Coast, because they're the worst second place team. They finished with 3 points and managed to get second slot, and that says a lot about that group, perhaps, with the exception, of course, of Cape Verde, who ran away with 7 points. But for Egypt losing Mo Salah, we were told that he would be out at least until the quarterfinals, which means he would miss 2 games, which was the final game against Cape Verde in the group stages, and then the round of 16 clash, where the round of 16 clash that they're preparing for now. But it looks like he may not even return for the quarterfinals. So that should be a little bit of a concern for the Egyptians. They looked a bit free in their game against Cape Verde. They were playing the best team in the group. They seemed to be freed from the Mo Salah shackles. Many players like Trezeguet were stepping up and trying to, to win it for their nation and showing that they can do it for perhaps their captain and their talisman Salah. But overall, at this point of the tournament, when you get to this point of the tournament, you need your star men. Now, on paper, they have a fixture against the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's on Sunday. You'd think that they should be the favorites, but we've seen the way, of course, the Congo has played in this tournament. This is a team that has pedigree, former champions themselves, and maybe not in recent times, but they know how to negotiate their way around the tournament. And they were not very impressive per se in the group stages. They drew all their games against Morocco, against Zambia, and against Tanzania. But if I was a betting man, I would say maybe Egypt will just have enough in the tank even without Salah in that squad. Trezeguet, for me, has stepped up when he's been needed. And at this point, many times pedigree comes into the equation, and you need your key players, and your superstar experienced teams tend to step up.
And hopefully they'll step up. Now let's talk about Ghana, a soccer powerhouse on the continent, represented at the World Cup in 2022. A solid team by all standards coming into the tournament. However, they did not have a good showing. They lost their opening Group B game to Cape Verde, followed by 2 draws with Mozambique and Egypt, both with a 2-2 score. What happened to the Black Stars?
Well, somebody said it easily. No party, no party. The Arsenal man, Thomas Partey, of course, missing the tournament, and the Ghanaians having no party in Ivory Coast, and probably that sums up the story for the Ghanaians.
Yeah.
In the moment Thomas Partey was ruled out of the tournament, he's their vice captain. You felt that they had lost such a big cog in the system, and you thought they were going to struggle. Now it got worse that Mohamed Kudus, who's, for me, was meant to be the star player of this tournament. And unfortunately, the Ghanaians are going home, and his tournament has been cut short quite early. But you thought maybe Mohamed Kudus would carry the mantle, but he missed the first game in that loss against Cape Verde, returned in their second game against Egypt, and he was the star man, of course, scoring those 2 goals and showing what his absence meant in the first game against Cape Verde. But the thing with Ghana, when you look at this group, it's such a narrow margin in this group that if Ghana hadn't conceded that last-minute goal against Cape Verde, we would be talking possibly about Egypt going home and not Ghana. And that's how narrow the margins were. So I think for Ghana, it's the end of the road for a golden generation, if you like. I think we've seen the end of Andre, Dede Ayew, the older of the Ayew brothers. Perhaps Jordan Ayew will stick around for the next tournament. He scored those 2 penalties in the final game against Mozambique. They led 2-0 in the 91st minute, and they were through at that point. They had advanced to the next round, and then they suddenly conceded 2 penalties in the space of 3 minutes, and they were out of the tournament. So I think for Ghana, I think it's the end of a golden generation. Now they've got to rebuild. Partey will probably still be around. Mohamed Kudus is going to take the forefront as the main man. Jordan Ayew will stay around. Inaki Williams flew straight back to Spain and eliminated Barcelona in the Copa del Rey. He will be around in that team. So they have a future, but it's going to obviously be with a new coach. Chris Hughton suffered. He was axed. He lost his job, and he paid the price. So I think it's just now they need change for Ghana. Obviously, a new coach is going to come in. My guess would be a local coach comes in. Chris Hughton came in, maybe struggled a bit to understand African football. Sometimes it's not that easy. Yeah. Normally, the French coaches have understood African football because many of these players play in France.
Right.
But then you get a coach who's been in England. I think it's a completely different ball game, and Chris Hughton just struggled to get his Black Stars.
Chris Hughton was supposed to be the guy who saved the Black Stars. I think he was brought in, was it right after the World Cup, is that correct?
Yes, that is right.
Yeah. I want to ask you finally, Jonah, which teams surprised you? What will be the Cinderella story of the group stages?
Wow. I think I have to go with Equatorial Guinea. For what they did to Ivory Coast. You don't just step up into someone's home and
I know.
For clean goals. I think what Equatorial Guinea did to Ivory Coast will be written in the stars. For me, that was one result that I didn't see coming.
Yeah.
And then their main man, Emilio Nsue, 34 years old. He's the top scorer of the tournament with 5 goals. He scored a hat-trick, the first hat-trick that we've seen at the Africa Cup of Nations in 16 years.
16
so their
years,
story
yes.
Is quite...
What a record.
Is quite the story. Yeah,
absolutely.
And when you look, of course, at the fixtures, they have a tie against Guinea, which on paper they should be able to negotiate easily. That's Equatorial Guinea playing Guinea. I think they'll advance further and get to the quarterfinals. In the last edition in 2021, they reached as far as they could. They beat Algeria in that tournament to reach the round of 16, to reach the quarterfinals in 2021. So I look at them being able to equal that. But this is where the interesting bit comes in. I think their journey will end there. They likely, I think, face off with Egypt or DR Congo if they advance, and I don't see them beating one of those teams, whoever comes out of that tie. So for me, Equatorial Guinea, definitely the story of the tournament with their star man, Emilio Nsue. But special shout out to Cape Verde. They're playing beautiful football, and the job they've done as well to top their group unbeaten. is also impressive. Angola as well, returning top of the table as well. Angola topped a group that had Burkina Faso and Algeria.
Yes,
Algeria,
a very tough group.
2019 champions,
Yeah.
finishing bottom of that group. So
Yeah.
there have been quite a number of exciting stories in this tournament, Jackson.
Absolutely. Jonah Byaktaga, all the way from Kampala, Uganda. Jonah, thank you so much for taking time to give us this brilliant analysis. Enjoy the games. I guess we'll talk again before the end of this tournament. But like you said, one of the best Africa Cup of Nations that we've seen in many years. And I do agree with you 100% on that one. Thank you so much.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Jackson. All the best for the rest of the tournament as well.
Thank you. That was Jonah Byaktaga, a sports writer and analyst. He joined me from Kampala, Uganda. You're listening to the Sunny Side of Sports. I'm Jackson Vunganyi in Washington. Follow us for more sports action at voaafrica.com. We are also on Facebook. Just search for VOA Sunny Side of Sports. Leave a comment and let us know what is your favorite team at AFCON.